This is Mass Incarceration, created and presented by Alyssa M. Bates. In this presentation, I will go over the description of the problem, which is mass incarceration, describe the systems that I believe are impacted by mass incarceration and are impacting mass incarceration, what is being done elsewhere, best practices, how I plan to address it, and how we will measure success. There are many consequences to incarceration of an individual: economic, family, and children seem to be the most impacted. So there are 7% of children worldwide, or 5.2 million children, that have had an incarcerated parent in their lifetime. 2.7 million currently today, or stated differently, 1 in 50 children have a parent incarcerated, which leaves 58% of women who are in a state, local, or federal prison to be the parent of a minor, and 47% of all men in prison. Children with an incarcerated parent seem to have a higher ACE score than other children without an incarcerated parent. Oklahoma, with the help of our governor and our deep-rooted religious beliefs, strive to be the best at being the worst. We are 48th in education, so there is anywhere between the lowest state and the highest state is about 7,500 and about 20,000 spent on student per year. And Oklahoma comes in at 48, and we spend just barely over 9,000 per student per year. We are 42nd in poverty, with about 15.5% of our population making below the poverty threshold. We are 4th in teen pregnancy, and we just made abortions illegal after a fetal heartbeat is detected, which I think will increase our rates of teen pregnancies and poverty. It will also bog down our education system more. We are first in male and female incarceration, despite efforts from private paid diversion programs such as Women in Recovery and First Step Male Diversion Program, both located in Tulsa. There are 3 things that I think feed mass incarceration, and 3 things that can also be easily fixed with legislation and a supportive community. So, zero tolerance policies in schools. We see systemic racism embedded in our education system, and the children that are most impacted by zero tolerance policies are Black and brown students. And with that, we see truancy laws, which are, if a student misses more than 10 days unexcused, then they are at risk of failing, which impacts families in poverty disproportionately. If a parent is already at work and the kids are supposed to get themselves on the bus and they miss an alarm and they're slightly late, then those kids are marked absent for the day. And with COVID and finding out that we can do virtual learning and be accommodating, I think that it's really important that we start to give students more flexibility than 10 unexcused absences a day, especially if there are roughly 12% of children not insured in Oklahoma. The uninsured children don't have the ability to get a doctor's note. Over-policing and multiple things play into this one. So the over-policing in communities, whether they're high socioeconomic status or not, we even see it in cities like Broken Arrow. And police are often called to calls in which they are not qualified for, such as domestic violence. They also don't have the time due to a high volume of other calls in which they are fielding, and so to have something set up where social service agencies can be called for domestic violence, it feels safer, and we're far more educated, especially in covert abuse and psychological abuse and reactive abuse. Drug policies, this stems back to our 13th Amendment, which states that slavery nor involuntary servitude shall be accepted as punishment for a crime. And it also goes back to the policing when we had enslaved people. So police were called slave patrols, and the drug policies began in the 1970s when President Reagan began the war on drugs, which we all know is a war on poverty because they attacked crack cocaine 10 times harder than they did powdered cocaine, which is one molecule different, and the molecule that is different creates, it allows it to vaporize, to be smoked. So what are they doing in other countries? Portugal, as you can see here, this is a safe consumption site in Portugal. So they made all drugs legal in 2001, so they have just about 20 years of data collected in this. Their overdoses went from 369 to 30. And their HIV cases, which is why they started the safe consumption sites, was to address their high rates of HIV, which were 907 to 18. And incarcerated individuals was cut nearly or more than in half, from 3,863 to 1,140 individuals incarcerated for drugs. Also, with Oklahoma being the highest in incarceration, we should be the safest state, and we are not. Portugal is the third safest country in the world. And here at these safe consumption sites, there are rules. They have to use a clean syringe provided. They cannot inject in their neck or growing or any main vein, as well as they have to let the nurse know what drug they are using so that the nurse could administer drugs to save their life in the event of an overdose. Zero tolerance policies, like I explained before, so what we could be doing in regards to the school to prison pipeline being fed is in zero tolerance policies. Data shows that 80% of men in prison do not have a high school diploma, and restorative justice is a unique tactic. Well, it's not a tactic or a technique, it is a paradigm shift in the way that schools think about discipline. And it asks educators to fundamentally challenge their perceptions of students who violate school policies and realize a lot of these students are enduring traumas at home, and it is really important that we show students that they need to take responsibility for how they treat their community and the members in their community. This cute little saying here: when support and control are both low, discipline is neglectful. When support is low but control is high, it's punitive. When support is high but control is low, it's permissive. But when support and control are both high, that is when discipline becomes restorative. And so restorative justice is about taking out the metal detectors and putting students or therapists and teachers and office professionals out in the hallways instead of police or security guards. So by defunding the police and putting that money towards social services, housing services, and education services, we will see a decrease in crime, I believe. We will start to see people getting help with their mental health, and people who are educated and housed and mentally stable, they typically do not create or engage in crimes. How I think we should do this is legislation changes, ending truancy, and zero tolerance policies. That is more just giving children rights in this country, which I think is really crucial. Divert funding from police to social services and criminalization of mental illness. If we are going to state that mental illness and substance abuse is classified as a mental illness, then we need to stop incarcerating for it, because we are incarcerating it at rapid rates. The highest truancy we see is in teenage girls, and so that probably speaks to their menstrual cycle, and we're not helping them or being accommodating. For my first project, I did a survey with women who had graduated from a prison diversion program, and I asked them the question, what do you contribute most to society? And their answers honestly took my breath away and made me so grateful that these women all have a second chance in society. Most of them, if you look at these words on this little word cloud from them, most of them are working at a nonprofit or in the community or with a private agency to help domestic violence survivors, to help people with substance use disorder, to help people experiencing homelessness. These women are really giving back to their community, and that is the beauty of helping people recover rather than teaching them a lesson by just sending them to prison. Another thing that we could implement is the Bill of Rights for children with an incarcerated parent. It was started out in California. And I'm going to quickly read through these and just let you know what they mean. So the first one is to have the right to be kept informed at the time of my parents' arrest. So if we could not cuff the parent in front of the child, give the child a bear, let them know maybe how long they'll be gone. If they don't have a bond, we need to let them know that it may be a while. Telling kids that their parents will be right back or something like that, or making it a violent arrest is really just traumatizing to the child. They have the right to be heard when decisions are being made about them, including where they will reside. They have the right to be considered when decisions are being made about their parents. So when it's a low-level drug crime and we're sentencing people to 20 years, did we really consider their children? They have a right to be well cared for in the absence of their parent. These children should not have to settle for mediocre care because their parent is not there. They have the right to speak with, see, and touch their parent. We see this with COVID right now. A lot of parents are not getting visitations with their children, and it is psychologically harmful to the children to go long periods of time without seeing, talking, or touching their parent. They also have the right to feel supported while their parent is incarcerated. So at school, making sure they have someone safe they can talk to. It's important to realize that these kids, it may just all of a sudden hit them again that their parent is gone for a long period of time, or that they don't know for how long. And their new caregiver is probably exhausted. We know that when fathers become arrested, 86% of the mothers of their children become single mothers, and when a mother is arrested, over 60% of the grandparents become full-time caregivers. They have the right to not be judged, blamed, or labeled because of their parents' incarceration. So again, making sure their educational and their home setting is a safe one that fosters their parents' recovery. And they have the right to a lifelong relationship with their parent. Native Americans have the highest rate of this, but we see judges terminating parental rights roughly 12 to 15 months after an incarceration. So if these parents are incarcerated for even 18 months, sometimes they get out and they have no rights to their children at all. And these are my references. I appreciate you all. Thank you.